Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1999. We're in the icy, absolutely unforgiving peaks of the Himalayas. And seemingly out of nowhere, a conflict erupts that's going to push human endurance and international diplomacy to their absolute limits. This is the story of the Kargil War, a war fought on what is literally the world's highest and most extreme battlefield. And wow, this quote from India's Prime Minister at the time, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, it just perfectly captures the entire feeling of this moment. You can hear the reluctance in it, right? This was a war born from a genuine desire for peace, but one that demanded incredible strength to protect that very peace.
So you might think a war like this starts with a big explosion or a loud declaration. But no, this one started with something much quieter. It began with a handshake, followed by a really shocking betrayal that just shattered a very, very fragile peace.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The contrast is it's jarring. In February of 1999, you have Prime Minister Vajpayee on a historic bus trip to Lahore, signing a peace deal. It was a huge moment. And then just 3 months later, that whole promise of peace is completely, totally undone. And get this, the first alarm bell wasn't from some high-tech satellite or a secret intelligence report. Nope, it came from a local shepherd, a guy named Tashi Namgyal. He was just out looking for his lost yak when he saw these armed men, all in black, digging bunkers. So he reported it to the Indian Army, and without even knowing it, he just kicked off the first response to a full-blown invasion. Let's be really clear here. This was not some minor border skirmish. This was a massive, carefully planned invasion with a code name and everything, Operation Badr. And the goals were incredibly ambitious. We're talking about seizing over 130 Indian posts, blocking the critical National Highway 1 to completely cut Ladakh off from the rest of the country, and in doing all that, totally violating the long-standing Simla Agreement.
So with the intrusion confirmed, India was suddenly facing this just monumental task. This wasn't just a war, it was an uphill battle in every single sense of the word, fought against odds that were, frankly, almost impossible.
To put it bluntly, the Indian forces were starting from a terrible position. Pretty much every single factor you can think of, the geography, the weather, even the politics, was stacked against them from day one. Okay, let's break down just how bad it was. You've got 3 huge problems. First, the geography. The intruders were on top of the mountains, which is a massive tactical advantage. They could see everything and fire down. Second, the environment. Soldiers were fighting in temperatures that dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. And third, a political problem, a huge strategic restraint. The Indian government gave firm orders. You do not cross the line of control. Now, that last point, not crossing the line of control, that was a huge deal. It was a pivotal decision. Even when the Indian Air Force got involved, Prime Minister Vajpayee's orders were absolute. And this restraint, as difficult as it was for the soldiers on the ground, was about to pay off in a big way on the world stage. And here's where that incredibly difficult decision paid off. By refusing to escalate, India framed the entire narrative perfectly. See, this wasn't an India-Pakistan war. It was a defensive action to kick out invaders from their territory. The whole world, from the US to the EU, saw Pakistan as the clear aggressor. This diplomatic masterstroke isolated Pakistan and eventually led to US President Bill Clinton himself putting pressure on them to pull back. But diplomatic victories don't recapture mountains. For that, you need military victories. And the entire war, the whole thing, really pivoted on one brutal, decisive battle, the fight for a peak called Tolaling. Seriously, ask any soldier who fought in Kargil, or any historian who studied it, and they'll all tell you the same thing. The war turned at Tolaling. Capturing this peak wasn't just about strategy, it was about psychology. It was the key that would unlock the rest of the conflict. And the conditions, they're just unimaginable. You have soldiers climbing up to 16,000 feet, forced to make these impossible choices. There's a story from Captain Ajit Singh. He had to decide between carrying a 2-kilogram food packet or 100 extra bullets. He chose the bullets, and he survived for 3 days on nothing but cigarettes. That's the level of sacrifice we're talking about. So the final push was just ferocious. Imagine this. For 4 straight hours, a relentless artillery storm of over 10,000 shells just hammered the peak. Then, 3 teams, with the code names Arjun, Beam, and Abhimanyu, launched this multi-pronged assault. After some brutal hand-to-hand fighting, Tolaling was captured. And with that,
the tide of the war had officially turned. Victories like Talaling, well, they weren't just about strategy and artillery. They were built on the backs of individual soldiers whose bravery, it just became the stuff of legend.
And honestly, no story captured the nation's imagination quite like that of Captain Vikram Batra, codenamed Sher Shah. After this grueling battle to take a position called Point 5140, his success signal back to base wasn't some military code. It was a famous tagline from a soda ad, "Ye dil mange more, this heart desires more." Just incredible defiance.
Then you have a story that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. I'm talking about the almost superhuman feat of a 19-year-old grenadier, Yogendra Singh Yadav. He's climbing a sheer 1,000-foot cliff on Tiger Hill and gets hit by 3 bullets. Incredibly, he keeps climbing the last 60 feet, gets to the top, takes out an enemy bunker with a grenade, and then collapses. And the most amazing part? He survived.
Captain Batra's story, however, it ends with the ultimate sacrifice. During his next mission to capture Point 4875, he was killed while moving out of his bunker to rescue an injured fellow officer. He secured the peak for his men, but he lost his life doing it. Today, that peak is known as Batra Top in his honor.
So all of these heroic efforts, they did bring victory within sight. But that victory came at a tremendous cost. And it left behind a legacy that is absolutely still felt to this day.
By early July, the writing was on the wall for the intruders. The momentum was just unstoppable. On July 11th, the Pakistani army finally began its retreat. Just 3 days after that, India declared its Operation Vijay a success, and by July 26th, the war was officially over. Every single peak had been reclaimed.
Meanwhile, over in Pakistan, the defeat caused a political earthquake. It created this massive rift. You had Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the guy who signed the peace accord, publicly saying he knew nothing about the invasion plan. But then you have the plan's mastermind, General Pervez Musharraf, who used the whole failed operation to his advantage, launching a military coup just a few months later, overthrowing the government and taking control himself. But for India, the victory, well, it was bittersweet. 527. That's the number of Indian soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice to take back those icy peaks. It's a number that's a really stark and very somber reminder of the true human cost of this conflict. And that really leaves us with a final kind of haunting question. This whole war started with a promise of peace, and it ended with hundreds of lives lost. So it forces us to ask, in an age where we talk so much about diplomacy, what is the true, absolutely devastating cost of a broken promise?